The kids' table is over there, with the other distant relatives. The young woman with the clipboard didn't even look at me. Her eyes were scanning the room, already moving on to the next problem. My table was in the very back, tucked into a corner where the fancy wallpaper was peeling. The kitchen doors were right beside it, swinging open and shut with a sigh of hot, greasy air. I saw my son, David, and his wife, Sarah, at a beautiful table near the front. It was draped in white linen and covered in roses. They were laughing with the groom's parents. They didn't look back for me. My granddaughter, Jessica, the bride, rushed past in a cloud of white tulle and expensive perfume. "Grandma? You made it?" She squeezed my arm, her nails pressing into my skin. "Just find your seat, okay? We're so swamped." She didn't ask where I was sitting. She didn't seem to care. I found my place card. Helen Patterson. It sat next to a man I'd never seen before, who was already scrolling on his phone. The clatter of plates from the kitchen was louder than the string quartet. I sat down on the cold chair and smoothed my dress over my knees. I sat there for 10 minutes. The room was filled with the low hum of conversation and the clinking of champagne glasses. I watched them give the toasts from far away. I couldn't make out the words, just the muffled sound from a speaker that buzzed near my ear. No one from my family came to the table. The man next to me never looked up from his phone. A young woman across from me yawned. I was invisible. I carefully folded my linen napkin and placed it by my untouched water glass. I stood up, my knees aching just a little. I walked through the grand ballroom, past the smiling faces and the towering cake. No one noticed me leave. The evening air was cool on my face. It smelled of freshly cut grass and the valet's cigarette smoke. I found my Buick in the parking lot, the gravel crunching under my sensible shoes. The silence inside my car was a relief. I didn't cry. I just felt a deep, quiet stillness settle over me. When I got home, the house was dark and silent. I switched on the small lamp by the door. On the little table in the hall sat a thick, cream-coloured envelope, my wedding gift. In my own handwriting it said, "For Jessica and Mark." I made a cup of chamomile tea. The warm mug felt good in my hands. I sat in my favourite armchair, the one with the faded floral print my husband, Frank, had always loved. The grandfather clock in the hall ticked its steady, comforting rhythm. I remembered Jessica when she was 6, sick with the chicken pox. I had stayed with her for a week while David and Sarah went on a trip. I remembered the smell of calamine lotion and the feel of her small, hot hand in mine. She had whispered, "You're my best friend, Grandma." I remembered the day I sold Frank's old fishing boat. It was the last big piece of him I had left. But the money paid for Jessica's final year of college. She had cried and hugged me. "I'll make you proud, Grandma. I promise." I even remembered helping her pick out her wedding dress just 6 months ago, the endless racks of white, the happy tears in her eyes when she found the one. I put the deposit on my credit card. "Just a little something to help you get started," I had told her. My savings account felt the pinch, but her smile was worth it. I looked at the envelope on the hall table again. Inside was a check for $25,000. It was most of my savings. Money I had carefully put aside from my Social Security checks for years. It was meant to be the down payment on their first house. I picked up the envelope and took out the check. I looked at my own signature. Love, Grandma Helen. The letters looked shaky. The wedding planner's voice came back to me. "The kids' table is over there." They didn't see a grandmother. They saw an old woman, an obligation, something to be stored in a corner, out of sight. I looked at the picture of Frank on the mantel. He had such a kind smile. He always used to tell me, Helen, you're not a piece of furniture. Don't ever let anyone treat you like one. A small smile touched my lips for the first time that night. I walked over to my little wooden desk and picked up a pen. The decision felt simple. It felt right. The stuffy air in the room suddenly felt fresh and clean. The next morning was Monday. The sun streamed through my kitchen window, lighting up the little dust motes dancing in the air. I put on my good navy blue coat, the one I saved for church, and drove to the bank just as it opened. The air inside was cool and smelled of clean carpets. Carol, a teller I knew from the church potlucks, waved me over. She wore bright pink glasses. "Morning, Helen. How was the big wedding?" she asked with a cheerful smile. "It was very clarifying, Carol," I said. It was the truest thing I could say. I slid the check across the smooth marble counter. "I need to cancel this, please." I kept my voice steady. "And after that, I'd like to talk to someone about travel insurance." Carol's eyes widened a little as she saw the amount on the check. Her professional smile softened. "Of course, Helen. Is everything all right?" I looked past her, out the big window to the blue sky outside. "Everything," I said, feeling a lightness I hadn't felt in years, "is about to be wonderful." The travel agency was in the strip mall next to the grocery store. I'd walked past it 1,000 times. The window was full of giant, glossy photos of white sand beaches and snowy mountains. It always seemed like a place for other people. The door chimed when I entered. A young woman with a kind smile looked up from her computer. The air smelled like fresh paper and faint, clean perfume. It was very quiet, just the soft tapping of her keyboard. "Can I help you?" she asked. Her name tag said Maria. I clutched my purse a little tighter. "I'd like to book a trip," I said. My voice sounded small. "Wonderful. Where are you thinking of going?" She gestured to the comfortable chair in front of her desk. I sat down. My mind was a blank. I hadn't thought that far ahead. I looked at the big map of the world on the wall behind her. It was covered in little pins. "Everywhere," I whispered. Maria smiled. She didn't laugh. She leaned forward, her expression serious and gentle. "Okay," she said. "Everywhere is a great place to start. Let's find you a view from the front." My phone rang on Tuesday afternoon. The screen showed my son's name, David. I let it ring 4 times before I picked it up. I was in the middle of watering my prize-winning petunias. "Mom, where were you on Saturday?" His voice was tight, annoyed, not worried. "I was at the wedding, David," I said calmly, snipping a dead leaf from a geranium. "I saw the ceremony. It was lovely." There was a pause. I could hear Sarah whispering in the background. "Well, we didn't see you at the reception," he said. "Jessica was asking where her gift was. She was expecting your card." The casual cruelty of it took my breath away for a second. They didn't miss me. They missed my check. "Oh," I said, keeping my voice light. "I must have forgotten it at home. Things have been a bit hectic." "Right. Well, can you drop it off? Or mail it? They're trying to put the down payment on that little house by the park." He sounded impatient, like I was a chore he needed to finish. "I'll take care of it," I said. I hung up the phone. I looked at my flowers, their bright pink and purple faces turned toward the sun. They didn't ask for anything but a little water and light, and they gave back so much beauty. That evening, I pulled out Frank's old suitcase from the top of the hall closet. It was heavy, made of dark green canvas with leather straps. It smelled faintly of his Old Spice aftershave and mothballs. Opening it felt like opening a memory. Inside, I found an old map of Europe, creased from a trip we took for our 25th anniversary. I spread it out on the dining room table. Paris, Rome, Vienna. We had been so happy then. He had held my hand as we walked along the Seine. My friend Martha called while I was looking at the map. "Helen, you were awfully quiet at church on Sunday?" Martha has a voice like warm honey. "I've just been thinking, Martha," I said. "That sounds dangerous." She chuckled. "Is everything all right with David and the family?" I traced the outline of Italy with my finger. "Everything is changing," I told her. "I think I'm finally going to use the good china, if you know what I mean." Martha was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "It's about time. That china is too pretty to sit in a cabinet forever." Maria from the travel agency called me on Friday. Her voice was full of excitement. "Helen, I have something for you. Are you sitting down?" I was in my armchair with a cup of tea and a seed catalogue. "I am, dear." "First class, round the world," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "We start in Paris, then a train to Rome. After that, a flight to Athens to see the ancient ruins. Then we go somewhere warm. How does a quiet beach in Thailand sound? We finish in Tokyo during the Cherry Blossom Festival. All the hotels are lovely, safe, central, with excellent service." It sounded like a dream. It sounded impossible. "My goodness," I said. "The total cost," she said, her voice dropping a little, "comes to $24,650. That includes everything: flights, hotels, tours, and insurance." It was almost the exact amount. The house down payment. Jessica's gift. I looked at the picture of Frank on the mantel. He seemed to be smiling at me. "Book it, Maria," I said, my voice clear and strong. "Book it all." On Saturday morning, my doorbell rang. It was Jessica. She stood on my porch, looking perfect in a pink tracksuit. She wasn't holding flowers. "Grandma," she said, walking right past me into the living room. "Mum said you forgot our card. We're heading to the bank, so I thought I'd just pick up the check." She didn't ask how I was. She didn't thank me for coming to the ceremony. I looked at this beautiful young woman I had loved so fiercely. I saw the impatience in her eyes. I heard the echo of the wedding planner. "The kids' table is over there." "I'm afraid there's been a change of plans," I said, my voice perfectly pleasant. Her brow furrowed. "What do you mean? What change of plans?" "My plans," I said, walking over to my little desk and picking up a glossy travel brochure for Paris. "The check has been reinvested." Jessica stared at the brochure in my hand. Her mouth opened, then closed again. The pretty pink of her tracksuit seemed to clash with the angry red rising in her cheeks. "You're joking," she said. Her voice was flat. "You spent our house money on a vacation." "I spent my money on my vacation," I corrected her gently. I placed the glossy picture of the Eiffel Tower on the coffee table next to my knitting basket. "But you promised. You said that money was for me, for my future." Her voice got higher. She sounded like she was 6 years old again, demanding a toy in a store. "I did," I agreed. "And then I sat at a table in the back by the kitchen doors." I looked her right in the eye. It gave me a new perspective on the future. She just shook her head, unable to understand. She pulled out her phone, her thumbs flying across the screen. "Dad is not going to believe this." She grabbed her purse and walked to the door without another word. She didn't slam it, but the click of the lock sounded very loud in the quiet house. The phone call from David came an hour later. I was peeling potatoes for a shepherd's pie. The rhythmic scrape of the peeler, a comforting sound. I let it ring 3 times before I answered and put it on speaker. "Mum?" What is this I hear from Jessica? You cancelled her check? You spent it on a trip? He didn't even say hello. His voice was sharp, like rocks grinding together. Hello, David. It's nice to hear from you too, I said calmly, rinsing a potato under cool water. And yes, that's correct. Are you out of your mind? That was their house down payment. We've been planning on this for months. Sarah has already picked out paint colours. That sounds like poor planning, I said simply. You should never spend money you don't have. The water swirled down the drain. This isn't about money, this is about family. You're being incredibly selfish. After everything we do for you. He was practically shouting now. The sound was tinny and harsh coming from the small phone speaker. I stopped peeling and dried my hands on my apron. I looked out the window at the little bird feeder Frank had built. A small blue jay was cracking a seed. David, I said, my voice quiet but firm. I helped you with the down payment on your house. I paid for Jessica's final year of college. I have babysat and cooked and hosted every holiday for 20 years. I took a breath. I'm not being selfish. I'm just retiring from being your emergency fund. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy. I could hear his breathing. Finally, he just said, I can't talk to you when you're like this, and hung up. I went back to my potatoes. They needed a little salt. The next day, I climbed the squeaky pull-down stairs to the attic. The air up there was thick and warm, smelling of old wood, dust, and cedar. A single bare bulb cast a weak yellow light over stacks of boxes and old furniture covered in white sheets like sleeping ghosts. I found the trunk with my important papers, my birth certificate, my marriage license, Frank's death certificate, and at the very bottom, my passport. It was dark blue and stiff. The photo was 20 years old. My hair was darker then, my face less lined, but my eyes were the same. I sat on an old rocking chair, the wood creaking under me. I ran my thumb over the gold emblem on the passport's cover. I thought about the woman in that picture. She had dreams, too. She wanted to see the pyramids. She wanted to learn to tango in Argentina. But then David needed braces, and the roof needed fixing, and Jessica was born. The dreams got packed away with the good tablecloths, only to be looked at on special occasions. Then they were forgotten altogether. It wasn't anyone's fault. It was just life. But my life wasn't over. My daughter-in-law, Sarah, called on Wednesday. Her tone was completely different from David's. It was syrupy sweet, the kind she used when she wanted something. Helen, dear, she began, David told me about your little plan. We're just so worried about you. A big trip like that, all by yourself, at your age. I was repotting an orchid, the earthy smell of the soil rich in my kitchen. I'm 72, Sarah, not 102, and I'm surprisingly capable. Of course you are, she said quickly. But it just seems so sudden, a bit rash. Is everything all right? Are you feeling lonely? The unspoken words hung in the air, confused, senile. I feel wonderful. Thank you for asking, I said, tamping down the soil around the plant's roots. And I'm not alone. I have a first-class ticket. I'm sure I'll meet some very interesting people. There was a pause. She tried a new tactic. It's just that Jessica is heartbroken. She feels like you're punishing her. I thought about the table in the corner, the greasy smell from the kitchen, the feeling of being invisible. I'm not punishing her, Sarah, I said. I'm rewarding myself. I told her I had to go, that my orchid needed my full attention. I didn't wait for her to reply. I made an appointment with my lawyer, Mr. Henderson. He was a kind man with thinning white hair who had handled Frank's will. His office smelled of old books and lemon polish. I sat in a heavy leather chair that sighed when I sat down. "I need to update my will, George," I said, "and I need a durable power of attorney for my finances while I'm traveling." He nodded, peering at me over his spectacles. "Of course, Helen. Any major changes?" "Just one," I said. "I'm changing my executor. I'd like the bank to handle it, not my son." He raised his eyebrows slightly but didn't ask why. He was a professional. "And the beneficiaries?" he asked, tapping his pen on a yellow legal pad. "Everything is to be sold," I said. The words felt strange in my own mouth, but right. The house, the furniture, everything. 10% goes to the animal shelter. 10% goes to the public library. The rest is to be split evenly between my son, David, and my granddaughter, Jessica. I paused. But only after they have paid back the full amount for Jessica's final year of college tuition, with interest. The records are in my green file box. Mr. Henderson stopped writing. He looked at me, a small, slow smile spreading across his face. "I see," he said. "Consider it done, Helen." The next week was a whirlwind of quiet preparations. I arranged for my neighbor, a nice high school boy, to mow my lawn. I called the post office to have my mail held. I packed. I stood in my bedroom, Frank's big green suitcase open on the bed. "What do you pack for a trip around the world?" I laid out a few simple blouses, 2 pairs of comfortable slacks, a good cardigan, and my walking shoes. I packed the small framed photo of Frank from my nightstand. Then, on an impulse, I opened the bottom drawer of my dresser. Under a pile of old sweaters was the dress I had bought for the wedding. It was a lovely, deep blue silk. I had felt so pretty in it, just for a moment, before I was sent to the corner. I folded it carefully and placed it on top of everything else. It deserved to see Paris. My friend Martha came over the day before I left. She brought a Tupperware container of her famous lemon bars. We sat at my kitchen table, the sun warming our backs. The house felt empty, packed up and waiting. "Are you scared?" she asked me, her kind eyes searching my face. I thought about it for a moment. "A little," I admitted. "But I'm more scared of sitting in that armchair for the next 20 years, waiting for the phone to ring." "Good for you," she said, patting my hand. Her hand was warm and dry. "You send me a postcard from every single place, you hear?" "I promise," I said. "And you make sure you eat my share of the green bean casserole at the next church potluck." We both laughed. It was a comfortable, easy sound. "You know," Martha said, her voice turning serious. "They'll come around. David and Jessica. They're just young. They don't see things clearly yet." I took a sip of my tea. The steam warmed my face. "Maybe they will," I said. "And maybe they won't. But I've learned something important these last few weeks." I looked out at my little garden, the petunias bright in the afternoon sun. "I didn't die," I said softly. "I just stopped being convenient." My flight was at 10 o'clock the next morning. I called a taxi. I didn't ask David or Sarah to drive me. I didn't even tell them what day I was leaving. I just left a note on the kitchen counter. "Gone to see the world. We'll be in touch. Mom." The taxi driver was a young man with a friendly face. He lifted my heavy suitcase into the trunk. As we pulled away from the curb, I looked at my little house one last time. The paint was peeling a bit on the porch railing. The rose bushes needed trimming. It had been a good house. It had held a lot of love and a lot of life. I didn't feel sad. I felt a quiet thrill, a little flutter in my stomach, like a trapped bird being set free. I was leaving Helen Patterson, the quiet grandmother, behind. I was on my way to meet Helen, Just Helen. The airport was a noisy, bustling place. The air hummed with announcements and the rumble of rolling suitcases. But the first-class lounge was an oasis of calm. It was quiet, with soft lighting and deep, comfortable chairs. A woman in a crisp uniform offered me a glass of champagne. It was 10:30 in the morning. I had never had champagne before noon in my entire life. "Yes, please," I said with a smile. She brought it to me in a tall, elegant flute. The bubbles tickled my nose. I sat by a huge window, watching the planes take off and land. They were so powerful, so graceful. They were going everywhere. And so was I. The seat on the airplane was bigger than my armchair at home. It was made of soft, dark leather, and with the push of a button, it reclined all the way into a flat bed. A young woman with a kind smile handed me a warm, damp towel that smelled of lemons. "Welcome aboard, Miss Patterson," she said. "My name is Claire. Can I get you some orange juice or champagne before we take off?" I had a small private television screen. They gave me a thick, soft blanket and a real pillow. When dinner came, it was on a ceramic plate with heavy silver cutlery. I had salmon with asparagus. It was the kind of meal you'd see in a magazine. I looked out the small, thick window at the clouds below. They were a brilliant, endless white, like a fresh field of snow. For so many years, my world had been my house, the grocery store, the church. It had gotten smaller and smaller. Now it was opening up again. I felt no guilt. I just felt a quiet, spreading warmth, like the first sip of hot tea on a cold day. Paris smelled of diesel fumes, strong coffee, and something sweet, like baking bread. A man in a dark suit was waiting for me just past customs. He held a small white sign that said, "Patterson." He didn't ask if I needed help with my bag. He just took it gently and led me to a clean, black car. We drove through streets lined with beautiful old buildings. They had ornate balconies and tall windows. I saw women walking tiny dogs and men carrying long loaves of bread under their arms. It was all exactly like the movies, but real. My hotel was on a quiet side street. The room was small, but perfect. It had a tall window that opened onto a tiny balcony, just big enough for one chair. I opened it and stepped out. Below me, people sat at a little cafe, talking and laughing. I could hear the clink of their cups and the murmur of French. I looked up at the sliver of blue sky between the rooftops. I was here. I was really here. The next morning, I woke up without an alarm. The sun was streaming into the room. I put on my most comfortable walking shoes and my navy blue coat. I decided to just get lost for a little while. I found a little bakery. The window was filled with pastries that looked like tiny works of art. I went inside. The warm, sweet smell of butter and sugar wrapped around me like a hug. I pointed to a flaky croissant. "Un," I said, holding up one finger. "S'il vous plaît." The woman behind the counter smiled and put it in a small paper bag for me. I found a little park with green metal chairs and sat down. I ate the croissant slowly, making sure to get every last crumb. It was the most delicious thing I had ever tasted. I watched the pigeons and the children chasing them. No one knew me. No one wanted anything from me. I was just a woman in a park, eating a croissant. It was a wonderful feeling. That afternoon, I walked along the River Seine. I saw the top of the Eiffel Tower peeking over the buildings. It looked just like its pictures. I found a little souvenir stand that was crowded with tourists. It smelled of perfume and old paper. I sorted through a spinning rack of postcards. There were dozens of the Eiffel Tower. I chose one where it was lit up at night, sparkling against a dark sky. I bought the postcard and a stamp. I sat on a bench overlooking the water. I took out the pen I always keep in my purse. On the back of the card, I wrote Jessica and Mark's new address, which I had memorized. Then I wrote my message. Dear Jessica and Mark, Paris is beautiful. I hope you are both well. Then I added one more line, enjoying my view from the front. I signed it, Love, Grandma Helen. I walked until I found a bright yellow postbox and slid the card inside. It made a soft, satisfying thud as it landed at the bottom. Back in my hotel room that evening, I put my aching feet up on the bed. My phone, which I had left charging, was blinking with little lights. I picked it up. There were 5 missed calls from David, and a long string of text messages. Mum, where are you? Your neighbour saw a taxi. Did you really go somewhere? This isn't funny anymore. Call me. Jessica is a wreck. You need to fix this. I read the messages. They felt like they were from a different world, about a different person. I looked around my quiet, peaceful room. I could hear the faint sound of an accordion playing on the street below. I held my finger down on the power button on the side of the phone. A little message popped up. Power off? I pressed it. The screen went black. I put the phone in my nightstand drawer and closed it. I had a dinner reservation at a little bistro down the street, and I wanted to wear my blue silk dress. I took a train from Paris to Rome. I had a small private compartment with a window. I watched the French countryside slide by, a blur of green fields and small stone houses. Then came the mountains, tall and jagged against the blue sky. I met a woman in the dining car. Her name was Eleanor, and she was from Australia. She was maybe a few years older than me, with bright, curious eyes and a wonderful, hearty laugh. She was travelling alone, too. Her husband had passed away a few years before. My children wanted me to move into a retirement village, she told me over a plate of pasta. They had it all picked out. Bingo on Tuesdays and chair yoga on Thursdays. She rolled her eyes. What did you do? I asked, leaning forward. I sold the house, gave them each a bit of money, and bought a one-way ticket, she said with a grin. They were horrified. It was marvelous. We talked for hours. We talked about our husbands, our gardens, our grandchildren. We talked about feeling invisible. It was easy, like talking to an old friend. When the train pulled into the station in Rome, we exchanged email addresses. You must visit me in Sydney someday, she said, squeezing my hand. I just might, I said. And I meant it. Rome was noisy and chaotic and wonderful. The air was warm and smelled of ancient stone and exhaust fumes. I saw the Colosseum. It was so much bigger than I ever imagined. I stood there, a small woman in sensible shoes, and looked up at the towering arches. I thought of all the history that had passed through that place. My own little family drama seemed very small in comparison. I threw a coin in the Trevi fountain, just like the tourists do. I didn't wish for my family to understand. I didn't wish for an apology. I closed my eyes and wished for more adventures. For myself. I found another postcard in a little shop near the Spanish Steps. This one showed the Colosseum at sunset, the stone glowing orange and gold. I sent this one to my friend Martha. I told her the pasta was even better than her lasagna, but not to tell anyone at church. I told her I was happy. I turned my phone on for a few minutes while I had my morning coffee at a small cafe. I just wanted to see if Martha had replied to my email. She had. But there were other messages too. An email from my son, David. The subject line was just my name. Mom. I opened it. It was short. Mum, we got your postcard. Jessica cried for an hour. This has gone far enough. We don't understand why you are doing this, but you are tearing this family apart. Your stunt with the will was the last straw. Please just come home so we can sort this out. I read it twice. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't ask if I was safe. He just wanted me to come home and fix the problem I had created by not being quiet and convenient. I deleted the email. The coffee was rich and strong. The little biscotti cookie on the side was perfect for dipping. My next stop was Athens. I had always wanted to see the Acropolis. I hired a guide, a lovely woman named Eleni, to take me. My knees aren't what they used to be, and the path up the hill was steep and rocky. Slowly, slowly, Eleni said, offering me her arm. The Parthenon has waited for 2,000 years. It can wait 5 more minutes for you. When we reached the top, I forgot all about my aching knees. It was breathtaking. The marble columns stood against a sky so blue it hurt my eyes. The wind was gentle, carrying the scent of dust and wild herbs. I stood there for a long time, just looking. Eleni pointed out the different temples. She told me stories of goddesses and heroes. Athena was the goddess of wisdom, she said. She was a warrior, but she fought with her mind. I liked that. A quiet warrior. That night, I had dinner on a rooftop restaurant with a perfect view of the Acropolis, all lit up in golden light. I ordered a glass of crisp white wine. I thought about the wedding planner's words. The kids' table is over there, with the other distant relatives. I looked at the Parthenon, standing proud on its hill. It was the front row seat to all of Athens. I raised my glass to it. To a better view, I said softly to myself. An older couple at the next table heard me. They smiled and raised their own glasses. We drank our wine in comfortable silence, 3 strangers sharing a beautiful moment. From Athens, I flew to Thailand. The moment I stepped off the plane, the air was different. It was thick and warm, and it smelled of spices, flowers, and the sea. It felt like walking into a greenhouse. My hotel was a small, quiet place right on the beach. My room had a balcony that looked out over the ocean. The water was a shade of turquoise I had only ever seen in magazines. The sand was white and soft as flour. I spent my days walking along the water's edge. I let the warm waves wash over my bare feet. I collected seashells. I sat under a palm tree and read a book, the sound of the ocean a constant, soothing rhythm. I didn't do much of anything, and it was glorious. One afternoon I took a cooking class. A small Thai woman with a smile that crinkled her whole face taught me how to make green curry. Her name was Lek. We chopped lemongrass and galangal. The kitchen was open to the air, and a warm breeze blew through. The smells were incredible. "You are a good cook," Lek told me as I stirred the coconut milk. "You have patient hands." "I've made a lot of casseroles in my life," I said with a laugh. "Casserole?" she asked, her brow furrowed. "It's a lot of things mixed together in a dish," I tried to explain. She just smiled and nodded, not understanding at all. It made me realize how big the world was, and how small my little corner of it had been. I sent a postcard to David and Sarah. It was a picture of a long-tail boat on the bright blue water. I kept the message simple this time. "The food here is wonderful. Hope you're eating well." I didn't sign it with love. I just signed it. Helen Patterson. I thought about them sometimes. I wondered if Jessica and Mark had found a house. I wondered if David had fixed the leaky faucet in his bathroom. But they were distant thoughts, like memories from a book I had read a long time ago. They didn't hurt anymore. The warmth of the sun and the sound of the sea seemed to be healing something deep inside me. My last stop was Tokyo. It was the complete opposite of the quiet beach. It was a city of flashing lights, towering buildings, and rivers of people. It was overwhelming and exciting. The cherry blossoms were in full bloom. The parks were filled with clouds of pale pink flowers. Families were having picnics under the trees. The air was filled with laughter and the soft scent of the blossoms. I wandered through a market one day. It was a maze of narrow alleys, crowded with little shops selling everything from fresh fish to beautiful silk kimonos. I bought a small, delicate tea set with a hand-painted blue pattern. I thought it would look nice in my new apartment, wherever that might be. I found a quiet little garden tucked away behind a temple. It had a pond full of bright orange koi fish and perfectly raked gravel. I sat on a bench and just watched the fish swim. It was a place of perfect peace in the middle of a bustling city. An old Japanese man sat down on the other end of the bench. He nodded at me and smiled. He didn't speak English, and I didn't speak Japanese. We just sat together, watching the fish. After a few minutes, he pulled a small paper bag from his coat and offered me a rice cracker. I accepted it with a nod of thanks. We sat in companionable silence, two strangers from different worlds, sharing a quiet moment. It was a better conversation than any I'd had with my son in months. On my last night, I went to the top of a skyscraper to a restaurant that had views of the entire city. The lights of Tokyo spread out below me like a carpet of jewels. It was endless. I ordered a cup of green tea. The waitress brought it in a small, handleless cup. It was warm in my hands. I looked out at the view. I remembered the peeling wallpaper and the greasy smell of the kitchen at Jessica's wedding. I had come a long way from that back corner. I had sent my postcards. I had made my point. Now something else was happening. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about them at all. It was about the quiet joy of a perfect croissant, the kindness of a stranger on a train, the feeling of warm sand between my toes. It was about me. I was finally enjoying my own view. The flight home was quiet. I watched the map on my little screen trace a line across the Pacific Ocean. I felt a sense of calm. I wasn't going back to my old life. I was going forward to a new one. I didn't go back to my house. Mr. Henderson, my lawyer, had arranged for a real estate agent to handle everything. I had them ship a few boxes to me. The picture of Frank, my recipe books, my gardening tools, and my favorite armchair. The rest was to be sold. I rented a small, sunny apartment in a town by the ocean, about 2 hours away from where I used to live. It was in a building for people 55 and older. It had a big balcony that overlooked a shared garden. It was clean and bright and had no memories. My friend Martha drove down to see me the first weekend. She brought a housewarming gift, a potted orchid, its purple flowers delicate and beautiful. "It's lovely, Martha," I said, giving her a hug. "Not as lovely as the pictures you sent," she said, looking around my new living room. "This place is nice, Helen. It feels light." "It is," I said. "I am." We sat on my balcony, drinking iced tea. The air smelled of salt and roses from the garden below. It was peaceful. I joined the garden club in my new building. I met a woman named Carol, who was an expert on tomatoes. I met a man named Arthur, who knew all about roses. He was a retired history professor with kind eyes and a gentle smile, much like Frank's. He always saved me a seat at our weekly meetings. One day, I was helping Carol stake her tomato plants. They were heavy with green fruit. "You have a real touch with these," she told me, wiping her brow with the back of a dirt-smudged glove. "My daughter, she can't even keep a cactus alive." "I just give them a little water and attention," I said. "That's more than some people give their own mothers," she said with a wry smile. We worked in comfortable silence for a while, the sun warm on our backs. It felt good to be useful. It felt good to be appreciated. About 6 months after I moved, I got a letter. It was forwarded from my old address. The handwriting on the envelope was Jessica's. I held it for a long time before I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Grandma," it said, "we got a small apartment. It's not the house we wanted, but it's ours. Mark is working a second job. I'm working too. It's hard. I'm sorry. I miss your Sunday casseroles." That was all. No excuses, no demands. Just that. "I'm sorry." I folded the letter and put it in a drawer with my recipe books. Maybe someday I would write back. But not today. Today, I was having coffee with Arthur. I still have Frank's picture on my new mantel. Next to it, I have the little blue tea set I bought in Tokyo, and a beautiful pink seashell from a beach in Thailand, and a photo of me and Eleanor, my friend from the train, squinting in the bright Roman sun. My world is not small anymore. It is full of new friends and new places. It is full of possibility. This morning I woke up early. I made a cup of tea and took it out to my balcony. The sun was just starting to rise over the ocean, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. The air was cool and clean. I could hear the gentle sound of the waves and the first chirping of the birds in the garden. I looked out at the beautiful, wide-open view. It was all mine, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt completely and peacefully at home.